You know, the difference between a sponge and a sift is that a sponge soaks up everything. But when you put something in a sift or in a drainer or strainer, you keep that which is good and you let go that which is bad. So when I came into this way of life at age 14, being so young and being a sponge in mind, I soaked up everything that my teachers said and without challenging them. And that's bad because there's no teaching that should go unchallenged. And when I mean unchallenged, I don't mean disrespectful. I don't mean being rude, but I mean when someone presents information and says that this is the truth, they have to have the ability to first demonstrate it, and you must validate it. It's a two-way street. They have to demonstrate how it's true, and then you have to go out and secularly validate it. Mm-hmm. When you go to a jeweler to purchase a wedding band and you make the purchase, we all know it's intelligent that you must get an appraisal. Why don't we employ that same way of thinking with the gems which come into our mind? If the gems that we put on our hands require an appraisal for validation, what about the gems that come into our minds? Having said that, when I reached about age 19 and 20, I began to challenge some of the things that I learned from my teachers. And I'm glad that I did, because it was that day that I became what my father told me a real scholar is, a free thinker. My mind was free. You are a prisoner, a slave, and a captive to someone's opinions until you validate it as being true. And it's when I began to release the bondage and the chains of captivity, mental captivity, to become a free thinker and challenge everything I was taught. And by the way, I still practice that same concept. Everything that comes into my sphere, I challenge the information before I accept it as true. So after challenging the information, the community that I came from rejected the New Testament entirely, even to the extent that they said that Jesus, whom we call Yeshua, didn't even exist. One of my teachers, if I can quote him verbatim, he said he's as fake as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So you have to imagine, coming from a school of thought that taught so hard against the New Testament, yes, I never challenged it for many years, but it was when I began to challenge information and I began to research, there was some very, very tough things that I found. And here's the first thing that I found, my brother. In my community, which rejects the narrative of Jesus as being a historical person, I found out through research you could do a better job of proving that Jesus walked the earth than you could do proving Abraham walked the earth. Are you hearing me? That doesn't mean Abraham is not historical. But what I'm saying is Jesus is more written about, contemporary with his era, than anyone throughout history. That would be the last person that you want to challenge as being historical. There's far too much contemporary evidence that validates his historical walk. So that was the first position that I changed.
Okay.
Okay. And then I began to wrestle with whether or not the narratives which are said of him are true. And the more I penetrated the Gospels, which is where he speaks, the more I said, wait, this is not the docile, turn the other cheek guy that my temple and congregation painted him as. He was a warrior. When there were wicked among us and they were doing wickedness in the temple, he made a belt out of spikes, went in there, overturned the tables, and whipped the money changers. This wasn't the turn the other cheek guy that I was always told. This was a warrior. This was a revolutionary. This was someone who got some newfound respect from me. Then I began to study his teachings. And I said, but wait a hot minute, because he sounds like several of the rabbis in the oral tradition. And that's hard for some people to wrestle because not everyone knows what the contents of the oral tradition reveal or teach. But when you know the oral tradition and you listen to the teachings of Jesus, you would know that in every instance where he was challenged for not keeping the law, it's because of the fact that the people challenging haven't fully grasped the law that they're critiquing him about. This man was a master of Torah exposition, so much so that his explanations literally went over the heads of many of the people of his generation. Remember, when he's introduced in the text of the New Testament, he gets up and he teaches on the Sabbath. And it says, all the rabbis and scholars and scribes marveled at the things that left his mouth. So clearly, he taught and revealed things that no scholar contemporary with him could understand. He was a child prodigy. He had a powerful mind. His discernment of Torah was so impactful that to this day, he is used as the marker for that which is righteousness throughout the world, as so many people have taken on to his teachings. Having said that, my brother, the awakening that I have experienced in embracing his historicity has caused me to grow fond of not just the character, but of the morality and the scholarly mind, the masterful mind that he possessed. And that surmises some of my views. I want to say more, but I'm going to hold back because I'm actually going to be releasing a book on him soon, which is entitled The Messiah Codex. So
Okay.
I unfortunately must hold back, but I just want to say I literally could say so much more.